Simply wish to return to your rightful place. Isn't that it?
Yes.
Then let's sort this out right now. Come along.
When people talk about Disney's biggest risks, John Carter almost always gets mentioned. The 2012 film was meant to launch a major sci-fi fantasy franchise, but instead, it became one of Disney's most infamous flops. Still, fans haven't given up hope. In fact, there are whispers of new life for the character, including the possibility of John Carter II, directed by Robert Rodriguez, and even a revival of Robert Clampett's original animated movie idea. That's right. Decades before Stanton's live-action version, there was nearly an animated John Carter movie that could have changed cinema history. On top of that, Jon Favreau once had his own vision for adapting the books, and that's worth revisiting too. So let's unpack all of this, because there's a bunch of fascinating directions the franchise could still go in. Back in the 1930s, animator Robert Clampett pitched the idea of turning Edgar Rice Burroughs' Barsoom novels into a full-length animated movie. This was years before Disney stunned the world with Snow White in 1937. Burroughs himself was thrilled with the idea because he believed live action, at the time, couldn't capture the otherworldly landscapes or Martian creatures properly. Clampett even teamed up with Burroughs' son, John Coleman Burroughs, to create test footage using rotoscoping so Carter's iconic gravity-defying leaps on Mars looked convincing. Unfortunately, when MGM tested the footage in 1936, exhibitors rejected it, calling the material too strange for mainstream audiences. MGM backed out, and Clampett abandoned the project, going on to make Looney Tunes classics instead. Now imagine if Clampett's film had happened. Not only would John Carter have beaten Snow White as the first feature-length animated film, but it could have created a new blueprint for sci-fi animation decades before anyone thought audiences were ready. That's why the concept is still exciting, because an animated John Carter today could serve as both a tribute to Clampett's abandoned vision and a continuation of Stanton's live-action movie. It wouldn't even have to overwrite what came before, it could expand on it. Animation allows bigger risks with visuals, so a John Carter animated sequel could pick up where Stanton's film left off, giving fans the closure they never got with the canceled sequels. The story Stanton planned for John Carter II, titled Gods of Mars, was wild. Deja Thoris would have opened the film narrating the events of the story to her child, Carthoris, who then gets kidnapped by Matai Shang in disguise. That setup alone feels tailor-made for animation because of the shifting forms, the alien races, and the ambitious environments like underground Martian cities. The climax, where Carter almost fights his own son, transformed into a superhuman warrior, would have been jaw-dropping in animated form. If Disney or another studio were bold enough, an animated continuation could finally deliver this story in a way live-action might struggle to capture. Of course, Stanton wasn't the only filmmaker who tried to bring Barsoom to the big screen. In the early 2000s, Robert Rodriguez signed on to adapt John Carter for Paramount after reading Mark Protasevich's script. He wanted to use digital stage technology similar to what he used for Sin City, which would have allowed him to create a stylized, cost-efficient Martian world. To add extra flair, Rodriguez brought in fantasy art legend Frank Frazetta to help design the look of the film. But things fell apart when Rodriguez left the Directors Guild of America after crediting Frank Miller as co-director on Sin City. Paramount replaced him with Kerry Conran, then later turned to Jon Favreau. Favreau's vision is especially interesting in hindsight. He wanted to adapt not just A Princess of Mars, but also The Gods of Mars and The Warlord of Mars, essentially creating a trilogy right away. His version would have blended practical effects with CGI, giving a more grounded feel than Stanton's final film. But Paramount pulled the plug before Favreau could move forward, redirecting resources toward their Star Trek reboot. That turned out to be a hit, and Favreau went on to make Iron Man, which launched the MCU. But it's hard not to wonder, if Favreau had made John Carter instead, would the MCU even exist the way it does now? Favreau's take is also worth revisiting because of his later work. Cowboys and Aliens and The Mandalorian both show his love of blending sci-fi, fantasy, and Western elements, exactly the kind of tone John Carter thrives in. So if Disney or another studio ever wanted to reboot John Carter again, Favreau could be the perfect choice. His approach would probably focus more on character-driven storytelling while still embracing the pulpy adventure tone of Burroughs' novels. Now, going back to Stanton's canceled sequels, Gods of Mars wasn't the only story on the table. There was also The Warlord of Mars, which would have wrapped up Carter's initial trilogy. In that book, Carter unites the warring Martian races after years of conflict. It's less about action and more about Carter giving a rousing speech about harmony, love, and duty to the planet that gave him a home. That scene could have been a beautiful capstone for Stanton's trilogy, and again, animation would make it possible without worrying about massive budgets or live-action casting hurdles. Beyond Carter's own story, Burroughs' Barsoom series keeps expanding. The mastermind of Mars introduces Ulysses Paxton, another Earthling who becomes the assistant of the twisted scientist Ras Thavas. Paxton's arc involves assembling a misfit crew to save his love interest, which sounds like something right out of a James Gunn movie. The team includes an assassin, a religious fanatic, and even a half-brained white ape. This ragtag bunch of characters would fit perfectly in today's cinematic landscape, especially given how audiences now embrace strange, offbeat ensembles. Another novel, A Fighting Man of Mars, offers a different kind of story. It follows Tan Hadron, a Martian hero who sets out to rescue a kidnapped noblewoman but ends up falling in love with Tavia, a slave girl he meets along the way. Unlike the usual instant love stories in Burroughs' books, this romance develops more naturally, making it one of the most heartfelt in the series. Adapting this story would let filmmakers explore Barsoom from a Martian's perspective instead of always through Earthling eyes, giving fresh insight into the culture and struggles of the planet. If you connect all these threads, the lost Clampett animation, Stanton's canceled sequels, Favreau's abandoned adaptation, and even new stories from Burroughs' books, you start to see how much untapped potential still exists in the John Carter franchise. It's a universe filled with epic battles, complex races, political intrigue, and unique love stories. And because of the way it balances science fiction with swashbuckling adventure, it has the flexibility to work in animation, live action, or even a hybrid approach. So where does this leave fans today? On one hand, the failure of Disney's John Carter still casts a long shadow, making studios cautious. But on the other hand, franchises like Dune have proven that audiences are ready for big, strange, and ambitious sci-fi worlds. If Dune can turn pulp into prestige, why not John Carter? A reboot or continuation, whether animated or live action, could finally give Burroughs' universe the justice it deserves. To put it simply, John Carter is one of those properties that refuses to fade away. Every decade or so, someone new takes a shot at bringing Barsoom to life, whether it's Clampett in the 1930s, Rodriguez in the 2000s, Favreau shortly after, or Stanton in 2012. Each version adds something new to the mythos, even if it never quite sticks. And maybe that persistence is proof enough that Carter's story isn't finished yet. Whether it's Robert Rodriguez finally getting a shot, Favreau circling back, or an animated sequel that revives Clampett's dream, there are still plenty of ways for audiences to return to Mars. Well, that's it for today. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel, because we'll be covering more updates on this soon and other exciting upcoming movies and series. We'll see you next time.